Every church wants people to show up for stuff. Events, services, retreats, conferences. Every church wants people to get involved, volunteer, give, get baptized, join a small group. How do we achieve these things? We have to talk about them. We tell people what's happening and hope that they respond. In ministry, we call this church communications, and it is, in my experience, the most dysfunctional creative department in churches. Things like production, social media, branding. Do churches struggle with these things? Sure. But you and I can probably name a few examples of churches that are doing them well. Also, to use production as an example, there are thousands of great videos on YouTube to help you improve. Communications, however, is a black box. Unlike social media, you can't see what other churches are doing, and almost no one talks about it, which is a shame because communications affects every area of church. Every ministry wants a spotlight on what they're doing, and a healthy church is one that is full of active participants and not passive spectators. So where do we start? 3 critical rules. And with these 3 rules, you will have a framework for what healthy communications looks like and how to actually get people's attention and then inspire them to action and getting involved, which is important because, let's be real here, many of us are thrust into the world of church comms without any formal training or expertise because someone's got to do it, right? Such is church life. The result from that is often this. We find ourselves drifting, being pulled back and forth by different demands and different ideas from different people and departments. Because here's the truth. If you cannot make formal policy yourself, informal policy will be made for you, which is a miserable way to manage any ministry and will never translate, in this case, to effective communications, which is why, before we outline these 3 critical rules, we need to get to the heart of why communications even matters in the first place. What are you really trying to accomplish? Here's the bottom line. Every Christ-following church exists to help people love God, love others, and make disciples. These are the 3 objectives of every church. Now, where does this come from? Directly from Jesus, because it's from the Great Commission and the greatest commandments that our churches find their purpose. And sure, we might phrase it differently, but we all have the same target. We exist to help people love God, love others, and make disciples. Now, do you see how each of those statements begins with a verb? And a verb demands action. You can't love God passively. You can't love people passively. You can't make disciples passively. And this is why everything that you and I do in our churches boils down to just 2 words: next steps. Because without next steps, all you have is a congregation of passive spectators. And I don't know about you, but I want a church full of active participants, not just spectators that are taking up space. Which brings us to the first rule in my church communications policy. Awareness is not interest, meaning it is not the goal of a stage announcement, email, social post, or text message to simply inform an individual that an opportunity or need exists in our church. Awareness is not interest. Very, very few churches understand this. I put it as 2% in the title of this video. Honestly, it's probably 0.2% or worse, because we all know what it's like to be in a church service where the person on stage is just rattling off announcements, one after another, dates, times, locations, and I can't even blame that person. They have no context for how this stuff works, likely. They're just trying their best, and they really think, if I can just get through this laundry list of church announcements, I'll have done my job. And people will attend the park cleanup and join a small group and give to the capital campaign. No, they won't, because awareness is not interest. That's rule number 1. Let's jump to rule number 2. Sunday is not your savior. And let me tell you, this is going to be one of your favorite parts of the policy as a church communicator. I am certain of it, because once this language gets circulated amongst the leaders, amongst the different ministries and departments in your church, it will once and for all demystify the weekend service stage as the cure-all for church events that are being ignored or overlooked. And look, I don't blame Ken, the leader of the men's ministry, who's just a volunteer. He works at an office job full-time during the week. Ken is just eager to have more people attend the Saturday morning pancake breakfast. But what is Ken famous for doing? He petitions and petitions and petitions to get a Sunday morning announcement, because in his mind, he fully believes if the church would just highlight his event, people would become informed and interested. They'd retain all necessary information, and the event would be packed full. And this is not to pick on Ken, because he's not the only one, is he? There are a ton of people like Ken that just think, okay, a stage announcement on a Sunday morning in front of the whole church, perhaps even delivered by me, that would really fix everything. The truth, though, is this: Sunday is not your savior. And we really do need to hammer this reality home in our churches, because so long as this pervasive belief exists, you can't install actual solutions, because people will still think, oh, yeah, no, sure, but All I really need is a few stage announcements. Sunday is not your savior, Ken. On to critical rule number 3. The more you announce, the less they listen. The paradox of church comms, whether from stage, via text, in an email, on social, the more you announce, the less they listen. Here's what I mean. All things being equal, if you do 7 announcements on a Sunday morning, the potency and expected response from those 7 announcements on the whole would actually be less than if you did just 3. This is the paradox. You tell your church about more things, they should then take more next steps, yes? In reality, no, because when all things are important, nothing is, and response diminishes. But churches make this mistake all the time. We think if we just communicate everything, you might hear something that interests you and gets you involved. But awareness is not interest. Sunday is not your savior. And the more you announce, the less they listen. I get it. These 3 rules are all about what you should not do. And that's because most churches with communications are like a boat with leaks filling up with water. You're sinking. And yes, we want to get this boat back to a place where we can use it as a vessel to take us where we want to go. But right now, we just need to plug the leaks. These 3 rules will accomplish that for you. And then, when the leaks are patched, we can start sailing this ship in the right direction again. To make a point, in the final 3 months of last year, my church had close to 500 events. From Christmas to small groups to next gen ministry, nearly 500 events in 90 days. Now, we're a bigger church, but what would happen if we attempted to do stage announcements on Sunday for every one of those events? Church would never end. Obviously, it would be impossible for us to do 100 plus announcements in a single service. We all understand that. Here's the part that will probably surprise you. Despite the colossal number of events happening at our church, ministries meeting every single day of the week, we keep stage announcements to 3 or fewer on Sundays. How do we do this? By understanding and keeping to these 3 rules. Awareness is not interest, Sunday is not your savior, and the more you announce, the less they listen. Those 3 rules with their working definitions are available in the description for you to download so that you can install this policy in your church. You'll notice this cheat sheet is branded with the logo for Pro Church Certified, which is our certificate program for creative ministry, with entire modules dedicated to communications and promotions. The great news is this: once you've fixed the leaks in your boat, we can actually start sailing it in the direction we want to go and build entire promotional sequences for different types of events that inspire your church to get involved. You can see the full scope for each module within Certified at prochurchcertified.com. Here are a few students that have completed the program and earned their certificates at the end of it. Link for Certified is in the description, where you can see the entire program at a glance, explore pricing and FAQs. And thanks as always for your time, attention, and trust. Talk to you soon.